let's really talk about when you talk about infrastructure, you also talk about the boom in data centers in this current fast adopting to digital world. So let's really talk about, what the Capex is for data centers per se and or rather, how scalable is this opportunity. We have with us Sunil Gupta, the co-founder and MD at Yotta, joining in on the show right now. Sunil, hi, good morning. Good to have you, Neeti. Now, experts have been quite vocal about the pickup in Capex clearly, and of these, data centers as well form a very large chunk of it. Tell me how much in terms of investments, do you expect in the coming next about 3 to 5 years, and how are the capacity expansions looking like in this field?
Thank you. Good morning. A sector which was just about 200 megawatt in terms of the total capacity from late 90s till about 2015 has already become about 1.4 gigawatt, which is 7 times in the last 7 or 8 years, thanks to multiple factors, including booming economy, uh, more than 75 crore Indians having smartphones, creating and consuming content all the time, widespread adoption of cloud computing, all the hyperscale cloud operators coming in India, enterprises going the cloud way big time, and obviously the latest thing in the game now, which is artificial intelligence. All these factors have led to this, I would say, sevenfold increase in the sector in the last 9 years. And if we see some of the parameters, India with about our 140 crore population is having about 1.4 gigawatt of data center capacity. But if we compare that with US, which is about 35 crore of population, but having 17,000 megawatt of data center capacity, simple maths, US is still 50 times higher than us. And we cannot say India is less digitally enabled than US. In fact, we are more. So if we go by that, India still has a long way to go in terms of building much more digital infrastructure in terms of data centers in the next 7 to 10 years. Today, this market is about $5 billion. And we are all expecting that by 2030, this market will become at least $20 to $25 billion, which will be another 5 times compared to what it is today.
I understand the big picture, but let's look at examples here. The cost of storage globally, and if I use floppy disk as an example, it crashes exponentially. So data centers are to be built on today's cost, let's say by a private enterprise like yours, and considering that competition is intensifying and the cost of data historically has always come cracking down, that's how new technology evolution happens. What's the safeguard?
So it is like that the cost of every single element keeps on coming down, whether it is the storage cost or whether it is the bandwidth cost or whether any single element which goes into that, but the sheer size of the pizza keeps on increasing. If we see the use case of digital, what you and me were quite okay with in early 2000 to how we are consuming digital today in terms of social media and content and very high resolution content and movies and digital payments, and now chat GPT and equivalent many other AI models. While the cost will keep on coming down, we as the industry will keep on having more and more use cases, so that the overall size of the digital economy still keeps on growing, and that keeps on giving us the incentive to build this more and more infrastructure.
Now, one of the most important cost component for data centers is electricity cost. And this is where this whole argument of whether data centers are power guzzlers, are they eco-friendly, are they, while it's a great technology to embrace, but it is coming at the cost of environment. Is that a valid argument? And how do you see the structural electricity cost for data center changing?
Well, that is always the debate. I think historically, how do you keep a balance between growth and sustainability? And anything digital, of course, ultimately is running on a massive amount of compute and chips, and these chips and compute, consume a whole lot of power. Yes, that's true. Data centers worldwide today are consuming about 3% of the power, which is much more than the airline industry as a whole. And we all fear that if the data center growth, the digitalization growth, including AI, keeps on unabated, it might lead to a double-digit share of the global, power consumption. Now, multiple things here. How do we save power? How do we consume less power? And second is, how do we consume more green power? in terms of saving, everybody has to contribute and everybody is doing, right from chip manufacturers, whether it is NVIDIA or Intel or AMD or others who are trying to make more and more power friendly, power efficient chips, to the software companies who are trying to write codes which consume less chip cycles, less compute cycles, to data centers who are trying to make their data center cooling efficient, because the main power which goes into chips, possibly you can't do anything about it, but what you can do is how do you use less power to consume? So right from changing the specifications that you can have a little higher temperature in data center compared to a 22 degrees C we can possibly run on 30 degrees C, to doing many other technologies like water-based cooling. Now, when we are getting GPUs for running AI, now we are actually taking water right up to the chip level so that the heat gets consumed, gets extracted right from the chip right then and there only. So that is multiple ways how we are trying to ensure as an industry to reduce the power consumed in data centers. The second is green power. Good part is in India, we have got more than 40% of the power produced today, which is green power. And the aim of government is also that while we are going to double our capacity in the next couple of years, a major share of this growth of power also will be green power. And data centers from starting in India are trying to adopt more and more green power. Now, whether it's solar, whether it is wind, whether it is hydro, we all are trying to have the maximization of our green power. There are challenges. How do you access this power on open access method? How do you store power? Because you can generate power in day, but you cannot consume that power in night time. The energy storage technologies are costly, but that is where the game is. That is where we all are attempting to have more and more green power and consume less and less power.
Data as to how much of the data in the world is generated by India and how much of the storage capacity of the world is in India? Because I have some numbers, but those are,
Yes.
those are not authenticated. So I want to hear from you.
No, absolutely. You're right. And that is where, this more growth opportunity comes in. Today, more than 17%, as per some reports, the world data is actually generated or consumed by India, but it's still only about 2 to 3% of that is hosted in India. So despite this massive growth, which India has seen in the last, I would say 9 to 10 years in terms of the data hosting here, there's still a long way to go. While a whole lot of enterprise data and transactional data is hosted in India, thanks to a whole lot of norms, including data localization, BFSI sector. But most of the social media content, where Indians obviously are the number one, the people who are onto most of the social media platforms, that data is still not in India. It's more of a caching servers which are there in India. So the moment that Indian data start coming and hosting in India, we will see much more massive growth and having I would say modicum of more data of India coming in compared to what India is generating today.
Okay, if let's say this interview of ours is put on YouTube, where will that be saved? Will that be saved in India or will that be saved in some server of Google in California?
I think it totally depends on their technology. I think nobody can say it very authoritatively. As on today, based on the data localization norms, it is not necessarily that it is hosted in India. It can very well be hosted in US. If we are doing an electronic transaction today, which is a payment transaction, whether net banking or doing any form of, maybe investment or shares or anything online, that is something for sure will be hosted in India because there are norms by the regulatory bodies for that. But a normal user data like this call which we are doing, this may be hosted in India because these hyperscalers are having very massive compute and massive cloud infrastructure in India now. But at the same time, based on their own internal parameters, they can still decide to put this on servers which are outside India.
Understand the global data companies who have got backends, whether it is AWS or whether it is Microsoft Azure or whether it is Google Alphabet. Are there entry restrictions for them to come to India and not start a data center, or can they start a 100% subsidiary, set up a data center, and they can store the data in India? So it is just that a US subsidiary comes to India, they store data in India. Can they do that?
Absolutely. In fact, they started while they were present in India even before 2014-15, but that is the time they realized, based on the growth which our country was witnessing in terms of all the economic parameters, they decided that if they want to have this market called India, they will have to put their cloud infrastructure in India. And that is the time between 2015 to 2017, where all these hyperscalers, whether it's Amazon or Microsoft Azure or Google and many others, they came and set up their cloud infrastructure in India. And over a period of time, we have seen that while they started where they were bringing their hardware, software, the cloud part on their own, but they were outsourcing the data center capacity, what we call as co-location, from Indian data center operator. But with time, as they have scaled almost like more than 10 times compared to when they started, new models are emerging where They already are buying their own land because many state governments are coming out with very specialized data center policies, giving a whole lot of incentives to DC operators, whether it is a pure DC operators like ourselves or whether it is this hyperscalers. So these hyperscalers are buying land directly or leasing land on a long term. They are building their own buildings and putting their cloud. So all the models are coming in and there's no restriction at all. They are growing like crazy as of now.
Okay, Sunil, so good to have you on the show and give us all the perspective on, which way data centers may be headed in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.